We've seen the index function in action, and we've seen how useful it can be, but what we didn't see was what happens when it falls over, when you try to interrogate part of a range that doesn't effectively exist. Let's take the sales 2013 file again. I'm going to put the row and column numbers that we're trying to locate as separate cell values. Let's start with 3 and 4. That way we can see the effect it's going to have on the function, and then the value we're trying to find. So we'll go equals index, open brackets. We'll stick with the bananas. I like bananas. So it's a named range banana, comma. The row number is determined by this cell here, and then the column is determined by this cell here. Close brackets, return, and there's 32. So row 3, column 4 is 32. And we can go through and make changes to these values here, and they return different values. So 5 and 4 is 17, 8 and 4, we get a problem. But if there isn't a problem, so if we go back to 3 and 4, or 3 and 9, we get the values. But we saw there a hash ref when you tried to put in a row that was outside the array size, or even a column. So I went for column 15, that too is outside the array size, and we get an error of hash ref. Now in itself, that looks messy and untidy. What we really ought to be doing is replacing that with our user-defined message that just says out of range. Much tidier, much neater, much more user-friendly. And we do that by using an if statement. So let's go back into the formula, equals if, open brackets. Now our logical test is whether the index that we're trying to look up actually contains a reference. And there is a little isRef function to do that for us. So if ref, we run that around the whole of our index statement. We put our index function inside the isRef function, comma. If that returns true, so it is actually a reference, a valid reference, then we're going to go ahead and carry out our index. So we place the exact same function in again. So I've pasted that up here so you can see that. And then comma. If it's not, so if it's false, therefore it's going to produce a hash ref error message. Then instead of that, I'm going to put a user-friendly message, out of range. Close my speech marks, close my round brackets for my if, and then return, and we see out of range. When we drop back inside the cells that exist, then the lookup takes place. So row 3, column 10 is 148. But anything outside of the valid range for bananas would produce an out of range error message. So if I tried row 8, we get out of range. And we do that with an if. And the if is asking isRef. Now the next chapter looks at more is functions because they're very useful for checking error messages. But this one here checks to whether an index is returning a correct reference. If it is, then it will go ahead and carry out the index. If not, then it will produce a much more user-friendly message for anyone using your sheets.